agenda. Our next agenda item is technology, common language, and common values. A study item, Mr. Kruth.
Thank you, President Pratt, and members of the board, and have Mr. Breene run us through a presentation regarding this, but it's something we've also discussed about where we're moving as a school district and what's important to us. We have a deep, long history of using values as guideposts for us, or as perhaps a better way, or as I've been thinking about it, they're not less a guidepost and more ballast. It's where do we recenter ourselves? Where do we reorient ourselves as we continue to move forward? How do we make decisions? From what platform do we make those decisions? Where do we go? So this is an extension of that, and I think the time is really good to do that in regarding technology. So with that, I'll have Mr. Breene run you through the presentation and go from there. Thank you, Mr. Breene.
Thank you, Mr. Kruth, President Pratt, members of the board. Really excited to talk with you tonight about something I'm really passionate about, and we've been talking about, like Mr. Kruth mentioned, for the last few months, and in some ways picking up on some work that we sort of started a little bit with digital citizenship in a group site council meeting before the pandemic. So we're picking up some of those pieces. So we're really excited to get some of that going. And as technology will have it, things do change in a matter of a few years. So it's good timing for us to look at this again. So in this presentation tonight, we only have about 87 slides, so we should be able to get you out by about 10 p.m. But just a little bit to talk about the why. Like I mentioned, we did start some of this work doing some group site council, looking at digital citizenship and some of those values and picking that up. So as we look at the why, there's really two reasons. I want to also give a shout out to Kendra Santucci. We're using all Vail pictures here in the presentation. So those are our kiddos. One of those reasons to look at this now is technology, just the exponential growth is just continuing to change constantly, right? And if you look at this growth curve, you could probably remember, when at least one of these things was invented. So for you, that may have been, the DVD. For some of us, maybe that was the printing press. Wherever you fall on that, you can probably remember something that came after that, right? And how fast all the other things that came after that and will continue to come, right? And that curve just goes straight up, right? It almost looks like it's going to do a roller coaster thing where it starts going backwards. So we know that technology is just constantly changing very, very quickly. And how do we sort of stay on top of that in a relevant way? And of course, like Mr. Caruth mentioned, approaching with a values-based approach, I think is the way to go, so that we can have that lens to look through as we're trying to constantly adjust to the very rapid changes. And sometimes that exponential growth sort of feels like that too. Things are happening sometimes where it feels like to us, right? And so as a school district, as these new things are coming at us, we want to make sure we have a good way to approach these in a holistic values-based approach that our community can really stand behind, not something that just the technology department came up with. Another reason to look at this now is what we should be teaching our students. What do we want that student to graduate? What are those skills that we want them to enter the world into? This infographic you see here is, these are the student standards from the International Society for Technology and Education. And these 7 standards really, show what our students should be entering the world with. And so part of looking at the technology now is, making sure that we're providing these opportunities for our students and not just pretending like maybe things aren't happening or we don't want them to see them. We wanted to teach the students ways to look at how to use technology ethically as well as new things come on board, like AI and other things. So that's really our real why, right? Is giving that opportunity for our students in a smart way. So what are we looking at here? Like I mentioned before, really taking this values-based approach. Like Mr. Carney just showed us the guiding principles here. We have a lot of values in Vail that we already live by. They've been affirmed and reaffirmed by our community many times. Everything from the ACT statement to the REACH statement to the guiding principles. And so we want to, really use that as a lot of our basis here as we create a values-based approach to looking at this work ahead of us. The charge that we've identified for ourselves is to identify common values that will guide our creation of systems and frameworks for the safe, thoughtful, and effective use of technology. Again, really leaning on those veil values that we already have. And there may be, some new values or things we need to sort of add in that are really focused around technology. But again, not reinventing any values or replacing anything. Something that I like to remind people of as we go through change is hard. People typically don't like change, but I also like to remind people about all the things that won't change. And our values and all those things won't be changing. We're just sort of molding that around the approach to technology and those common values. Our intended outcome is, take that values first approach. And from that, we will use that work to create those systems, frameworks, and policies second. So we really need the community's help in aligning those values, making sure we're on track. And then some of that nitty gritty, getting into the, creating those frameworks, policies, and systems that may fall on district staff or the technology department or teachers or principals. They will be able to lean on those products that we can create based on values. That might be my favorite picture there, actually. Those kids look really happy. So how are we going to do this? Well, our goal, in terms of lining our arrows, in classic veil fashion, we want to make sure we're aligning our arrows here as well. And so one great way that we've done this multiple times, and whether it's building schools or looking at character education or special education or a variety of other things I can name, is to really take that community committee approach. So looking at having a committee built of parents, staff, and community members. So in terms of those parents, really leaning on the schools, site council members to be involved, representing those schools as the parents, looking at some of our teachers and staff, many of whom are also parents, obviously, and then technology staff and some other district staff to help build this committee out, and looking at, almost picture joint site council meeting where we have, a bunch of people working together from representing all the different schools, large group, 60 to 80 people, somewhere in there, depending on what that looks like after we get those invites out. And we're looking at a couple of meetings before the end of this school year, one on April 27th and one on May 16th, and then take a little break for summer and pick that work back up at the beginning of the year, hopefully finish maybe in that second quarter at some point. But again, going with the pace of the group, making sure that we're working with that group. And then that last piece I wanted to mention was the goal is to really create something that we can use as a guide as when we're making decisions, whether that's us here at the district office or the schools, something to look at when they're trying to make those quick, fast-paced decisions on new technology that's flying at us every day. Just to give you an idea of a few things that we have in terms of thinking about for consideration, like I mentioned earlier, digital citizenship, and everything from cybersecurity to cyberbullying to student data and privacy, which we're being, very careful at looking at those things, all the way to screen time and when to not use technology, right? Just like I tell my boys to go play outside and get some fresh air in the sun, it's also good to remember when not to use technology. Looking at things like AI and machine learning that are just coming at us very quickly. How do we approach that in an ethical and thoughtful way? Apps and instructional tools, social media, all sorts of things in there. So those are just a couple things we've already thought of. I'm sure we're going to have more work come out of the committee group. So again, we're looking at getting that started pretty soon. And Mr. Caruth and I were hoping to get that email out tonight after our board meeting. But again, that goal is to really have that common lens that we're looking through. So as we do the work with this committee, what we want to come out at the end with is this common lens. As we're developing systems, frameworks, and policy, we're all looking through this common lens that's values-based. And I just want to end with this quote from the ISTE student standards page. I think this is just one of our really important goals in terms of students and technology. Today's students must be prepared to thrive in a constantly evolving technological landscape. And that's really our goal, is to just make sure they're ready and we're doing right by them in terms of preparing them as they leave here in Vail. And that was all I had for you. I'd be happy to answer any questions or hear your comments.
Thank you. Comments or questions?
Just an
Mr.
excellent
Vincent?
presentation.
Yeah, it was. Agreed. You think no? Good. Okay. Mrs. Tippett?
This is something that I've kind of been feeling for a while. And so I'm grateful for the bandwidth and the opportunity to have time to dig into this issue for our community, for our families, for our students. And I'm planning to participate on the committee, and really grateful for the opportunity to be really intentional about how we use this tool.
Thank you. Mrs. Tippett, other comments or questions? I just want to say thank you. Just to echo kind of what Mrs. Tippett said. I'm excited to kind of see where this committee goes. I'm hoping to be able to serve on it. We'll see what the timing works. But anyway, thank you for your work on this. It's very timely. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Before we move on to the next agenda item, I'm remiss in just wanting to call out some guests in the back of the room.